Someone help you out, and Leggy got caught up on the detour. Oh. in this document.
Yeah, except for Judy doesn't count, right? Right.
Jenny,
Chuck, you've got two pictures that you're not on. There's one and there's another one.
And I'm setting up for other people when they run.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's good. You know about it.
Jenny's on the call. Jenny's on her way.
Okay,
That's one of them.
Oh, that's it? We got caught too?
That's one of the mystery people.
I know who would know, but I thought the school bus drivers would tell everyone.
The schools had their own challenges today.
Oh,
Sure.
Lockdowns, right?
Yeah, a lot of communication, not a ton of lockdowns around. The Swanson thing. Yep. All the way up the northway and all the way across the state.
Yeah, I was like, some of my friends from Buffalo were texting about it this morning, because I know a lot of my friends are teachers, so I started messaging about it. Terrible.
Well, it is because like the boy cried wolf, you know what I mean, is what it ends up,
Yeah.
and then nobody thinks it's real, and then you got a real thing.
Okay, so Nick, you're all set? You can hear us?
yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Why is it your video on there?
I was too worried about getting Nick going here.
I got you now.
Show them your face and you'll get him going.
All right, we'll start with the CDC meeting. We call the CDC special meeting to order. CDC is, the only item on the agenda is the 2022 audit report. Tim, you want to cover it for us?
Would you like me to take attendance first?
Yes, please.
Tim Robinson,
Here.
Nick Caimano,
Here,
Mary King,
Here.
Brian Campbell,
Here.
Juan Gonzalez,
Here.
Dave O'Brien.
Here,
Okay, we do have a quorum. We have 6 out of 10 present.
okay. Tim,
All right,
take it away.
Yeah, sure. You have before you the audited financial statement for fiscal year ending 12/31/22. It is a thorough audit. I hope everybody's had a chance to look at it. It does contain both the CDC and the IDA's financial positions at the end of 12/31/22 and the revenues and expenses for the same broken out and then with a comparison to 21. You know, there's some highlights. I hope everybody had a chance to read the highlights, financial highlights in here. I think we all know why the balance sheet's inflated, because of the acquisition of the canal side property. We have a strong operating position at the end of the year, but it was restated. There was some restatements that the accountant has, but in general, we're asking for the approval of the audit as presented by the audit firm that we hired.
So that's strictly from CDC part of it.
That's strictly for the CDC part of it.
Okay. Take a motion for approving the CDC audit.
I'll second.
Second by Nick. Any further discussion or question? All in favor?
Aye.
And
That's gotta, I think that should have a roll call.
that'll do roll call.
Tim Robinson,
Yes.
Nick Caimano,
Yes,
Mary King,
Yes.
Brian Campbell,
Yes.
Juan Gonzalez,
Yes.
Dave O'Brien.
Yes.
Allie.
Very good.
Craig Lawson.
Craig Leggett.
oh, is he here?
He's here.
And Mike,
Here.
Mike Webb is now present.
What did we wait for?
We did.
Well, no, you weren't the only one. People are straggling in for the same reason you probably. Sorry, you know, it's just these words. Yeah. I don't know. Bruno and Jimmy Sullivan. I know the exact way that the kid works. Okay, any other, this come before the CDC? All right, closed. We're adjourned, CDC. IDA special meeting. I already called meeting to order. And at the same attendance. This one. First item of business is a high collection bond maturity date extension. I'll let Kara explain that.
So the Hyde collection, had a bond reissuance in 2013. And, because of the original issuance, the bonds were issued under the, IDA as opposed to the CDC. That's why it's the IDA, not the CDC. So when, the reissuance was done in 2013, we kept in line with them being issued under the IDA because the project commenced under the IDA. So that's just an aside in case you're wondering why it's not the CDC. In any event, the reissuance maturity date is April 1st to 2023. During COVID, the Hyde collection reached out to Glens Falls National and asked for deferment of payments during that period of time, so that obviously due to the reasons that COVID presented for all of us. And the bank granted that. The intention on the bank's part was to re-amortize that when payments began, but there was some issue with that. And so as of April 1st, 2023, they will have a total due of $45,000, as opposed to requiring them to make a lump sum payment. The bank would like to extend that maturity date to August 1st so that they continue to make the regularly scheduled payments, as opposed to a lump sum payment. So I reached out to Joe Scott, who is, as you know, bond counsel for the IDA, and as soon as he saw any issue with that, he didn't have any issue on our end, from our perspective, to allow that to be extended out. So that is what we're requesting, approval of the extension out to the maturity date to August 1st of 2023.
So just 4 months.
Mhm.
So moved by Brian, do I have a second? Greg Leggett. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That's fine. Again, we go into the audit.
Okay, so same spiel here. The audited financial statements have been presented to all of you. There are financial highlights that I'd let you read, but it is combined CDC, Industrial Development Agency, the comparison to the prior year. And if there's any questions, otherwise I'd make a motion to accept this audit.
So moved by Brian, do I have a second? Second by Mary. Any further discussion?
Just the disaster plan recovery.
That's in process.
We are working with the technology firm.
Well, it became a, how do I want to say it? The auditors suggested something like this. We're talking, technology firm said, you don't need that much. They were way overkill, so we're working through it, but there are some safeguards put in place for cybersecurity, so those will be in place pretty soon. Okay? All right, roll call.
Greg Leggett,
Yeah.
Tim Robinson,
Yes.
Mike Wild,
Here. Yes. Sorry.
Dan Bruno,
Here.
Nick Caimano,
Yes.
Mary King,
Yes.
Brian Campbell,
Yes.
Juan Gonzalez,
Yes.
Dave O'Brien.
Yeah.
Ginny, I know you just walked in. Do you want to vote on the audit? You didn't hear what Tim had to say. Do you have any questions about it?
I think I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, motion passed.
all right, so I move on, there's had some questions that came up, so I really wanted to cover some of those questions. And I think that through this process, we found that there is a misunderstanding of some things the IDA does and how it operates and where it looks at. So I wanted to cover that. First, I wanted to really talk about the existing projects because some people talk about the existing projects. And what we have is that in Warren County, we have 23 active projects. There were more that were done way back when, but that's the active projects. The full-time equivalencies that they projected as part of the project when we made their application was 478. The actual in 2021, which is the COVID year, and we looked through some of the numbers, we looked at numbers, there were places that shut down like Rockport, interpersonal contact. There was other places like hotels and motels that you get the same level of activity. So in actual 2021 was 494. And we jump up to people back in full operation in 2022. The actual was 673. And we still have people still reporting. So it's going to go up. So you can see that the projects did what they're, one of the things they're anticipated doing is number one, they increased employment in there far more than was projected by the original time in the application. And it's going to go up. We did hit the 2 years of COVID, which really brought the numbers down in a lot of places, especially some hotels and stuff. So that's in place.
Dave, what was that total number of businesses again?
23 projects.
23, that's just one county, right?
That's just one county.
Thanks.
In Washington County, number of projects is 10. 2 of the projects have not really started yet. Again, they're going through the process of delays, not delays, but getting things in place, financing in place. So they're looking at that, but they're already pre-approved. We have 10 of them. And the original projected was 162. In 2021, there's 270. The same caveat with the actual 2022 was 280. No, someone's got their,
Yes.
okay. It's gone away, I hope. Okay, good, thank you. Actually, Stuart,
Part of this statement, I missed that, 2 something,
270, actually 2021.
that's the 2 counties combined?
No, that's just Washington County. And in 2022, the numbers, there's still some people reporting. There are 4 projects that are 4 projects is brand new. That number of actual is 284, so it's doing its job as far as that, as far as assessed value, and bringing things in and bringing economics back in there. For the 4 counties, or for the 2 counties, I'm sorry. Number of projects is 33. Full-time equivalency projected at the time application made was 640. Actual in 2021 was 764. And 2022 to date, we have 9,957 reported, and there's still numbers coming in. We haven't got all numbers in yet before we report it. So I just want to let people know. And if we look at the distribution of the projects, there's 1 in Chestertown, 1 in Glens Falls, 1 in The Hague, 4 in Lake George, and 16 in Queensbury. In Washington County, there was 1 in Cambridge, 1 in Fort Anne, 1 in Fort Edward, 1 in Greenwich, 1 in Hampton, 3 in Kingsbury, and 2 in White Creek. So that was distribution of current projects in the IDA that are active. Some of those are strictly bond projects. Bond projects don't necessarily collect the employment numbers, but bonds, all we do for them is put the with a loan vehicle for them to get bonds for tax exempt bonds. So look at that. So that was the numbers. Let's see. So I want to get back to looking at it and talk about things is that if we look at the IDA purpose, I think a lot of people really don't have a good grasp of what the IDA purpose is. And I wanted to look at the areas and talk about where it comes from the neighboring statute. Our neighboring statute, we think that there is a misnomer in the name. Unfortunately, the name was created 50 years ago when economics was completely different. It's not really accurate anymore. It wasn't even accurate back then. But if we talk about it, it is I'm reading from the neighboring statute, is that is for the benefit of counties of Warren and Washington and inhabitants thereof, and industrial development agency to be known as the county of Warren and Washington Industrial Development Agency. Is hereby established for the accomplishment of any and all of the purposes specified in Title I of Article 18A of this chapter. It shall constitute a body corporate and politic and be perpetual in duration. It shall have the powers and duties now or hereafter conferred by Title I of Article 18A of this chapter upon industrial development agencies, and provided that the exercise of the powers of such agency with respect to the acquisition of real property, whether by purchase, condemnation, or otherwise, shall be limited to the corporate limits of Washington County. The rest goes on more legalese. But I wanted to go back to talking about what the reference is and the powers of it. It says, my fingers.
What's happened?
Nope. The purposes of the agency shall be to promote, develop, encourage, and assist in acquiring, constructing, reconstructing, improving, maintaining, equipping, and furnishing industrial, manufacturing, warehousing, commercial, research, renewable energy, and recreational facilities, including industrial pollution control facilities, educational and cultural facilities, railroad facilities, horse racing facilities, wow, automobile racing facilities, renewable energy projects, and continuing care communities, provided, however, that of agencies governed by this article only, and that continues to talk about that only references the benefit of New York City, and thereby advance the job opportunities, health, general prosperity, and economic welfare of the people for the state of New York, and to improve the recreation opportunities and standard of living to carry out aforesaid purposes. Each agency shall, it goes on to specify, you can read it in time, it's Article 18 of John Municipal Law, Section 852. So I think some of the comments that we got was, what we read Industrial Development Agency really doesn't cover the span of what we do over the span of his intent even back 50 years ago. It has mitigated substantially over the past few years when it's opened up different areas through the years. We all know economic development, even business today, are much different than they were before. It's gone through, we talk about jobs, but we have, with the lack of ability to be able to workforce, we have companies, restaurants, everyone looking at different ways to automate and get by with fewer people. It's not because they want to, because they have to. And the trend involved in there. So, we have to take everything in consideration. I think also when we look at it, with our purposes, not only to attract new businesses to the area, as importantly, if not more importantly, is to retain existing businesses. We got a lot of companies here. We want to keep them here. We don't want to lose employment. So if there's things that the IDA and other agencies can do to help them stay here, that's imperative on us also. Assist current businesses to expand and develop new product lines. Expansion, always great to see businesses succeed. Because not only do they expand and grow, they provide ripple down effects throughout the entire economic area, generating sales tax, generating jobs, very important to us, and new assessments, existing bigger assessments. Well, I think the other thing is that people also need to realize that when we evaluate a project, there's a lot of projects that never come out of talking to one of us about what we can do. They don't fit in, they're too small. we also have something that comes into our agency that says they need to attest in this sworn statement that this business will not go forward or the project will not go forward without assistance from the IDA. And there's a lot of reasons for it, especially today with skyrocketing costs and interest rates, availability of funds. There's really a lot of things that go there. We also need to realize that we need to retain current businesses. And we have a couple businesses that have looked at us and one of them we're currently working with has really evaluated taking their location south. And, you know, it took them quite a while to do their comparisons, manufacturing costs, their performance, make a decision that the only way they could stay here is if they got some assistance to go there. So, you know, it's always valuable to keep existing businesses. You know, I can't stress that enough. We also have to look at, does this business make sense? With every project we do a cost benefit analysis. That cost benefit analysis, number one, may show it's not even worth it to them to look for IDA systems, not for everyone. It's just like we do when we are going to spend money. We do the pros and cons. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, we'll move on. But it has to make sense and has to be benefit of the area. Some people may call it our ROI. So this cost benefit analysis is required every project we do. We report all these statistics through the through the ADO. ADO was one of our governing bodies, and the comptroller also takes a look at it. So I think those things are important for people to remember. We have a lot of oversight. We have a lot of oversight of a lot of things we do. We have to report everything, job growth, everything to Paris every day, and that's what we're working on, collecting this information. We collect the information every week, once a year. And we look at those. Unfortunately, when I go down through the list of all the projects we have on in hand, other than the blip of the COVID years, most people have either meet or exceeded what they looked at. And there's a couple that are close. But I think some of those are also reverberating from what happened over the past 2 years in the financial situation and the demand for people. So, you know, it's something we take a look at, not just once, we look at every year. Fortunately, we haven't had any businesses as far as I've been on the idea, and that's like 12, 13 years now. I don't even remember that now. That haven't met their metrics, what they promised to do, what they look to do. A lot have expanded way beyond what they've done and grown and expanded here. One other thing that really gets to be a little misunderstood is that projects are getting no assessment. Well, that's not really true. I think I've seen some articles coming out that said, well, there are exemptions on these properties. Yes, there are, because when they're in the IDA, how it works to do the pilots is that we have to be in the chain of title of the project and make some tax exempt. What people aren't going through, because it doesn't show any place, doesn't show on the tax rolls, it may not show on the assessment rolls. But when we look at it, pilots. And I think that the one I looked at was, and I don't think people looking at it really understand the full depth of it, the full depth of what's happening. And yes, every single project we do, whatever is there on the assessed value stays the same. That doesn't change, with one exception. Actually, two exceptions. The one exception is that if it's an old building coming down, yes, the assessed value is going to go down, but most people, we wouldn't be doing a project unless we're going to put something else in place there. Build a new building, new business, put another valuation in there. We will be doing work with them. There are other cases where projects, say it's Agland is at one assessment level, but if you take a look at change in use, it may go to commercial, it may go to some other classification, that is going to gain in value and assessed value to begin with. So that is always going to be the level that, with the exception of a piece of property where a building's coming down to put another one, you're still going to get the same assessed value and the same, at least on the same tax rate. So that's what people really don't see sometimes. And I think that one of the things I looked at was Albany County Treasurer different statistics that people are saying we're losing this much money in assessed value. Well, when he looked at it, they were actually gaining much more than they were losing, because if they hadn't got assistance, the same thing's true. If they can't do the project, if they can do the project without the IDA, that's one thing. If they can't do the project, they can't get financing, you don't get it. So you may have the same property there, but you're not gaining anything from that. And he made a difference, and they gave the numbers of it, and he came up with, it was $6 million more in assessed value coming in than what some other organization talked about. So the numbers are really there when you look at it, when you increase the assessed value. And one of the investments we're doing is that the first 5 years of any organization, whether it's new or expanding businesses, the first 5 years is also always a difficult time. And we want to make sure they can reinvest in their company, help the company grow, maybe hire new workers, more than they anticipated, or develop different projects or different products to move forward. So I think that's the case. A lot of times when today's world, if you look at finance rates going up, there's banks looking at them and say, hey, listen, if you don't get some sort of help here, make your performance look good, we can't finance you, especially when they don't know what the interest rates are going to be. So I think the other thing that's come up is solar projects. I think that pretty soon everyone's going to be out of the solar assessment business, because the state's got their mind of what they're going to do. And if it comes true, I think that it's really going to put a crippling effect on any assessed value that anyone, schools, towns, villages, counties, thought they were going to get out of these. And I've looked at the numbers of some calculations, and it's about a quarter or less of what they did. They're going to try and use what's called a discounted cash flow. There's one court case, but there is rumors that the governor is going to try and push it through the budget process. And the numbers are really startling when they take a look at what they're going to come at. So it's going to be through assessment. And I think that's important to remember as we look at it, because it's going to be important to all of us as we go through. So any questions?
Just a comment.
Dan the first.
So, Dan, microphone. So I take the math of the state, it's gonna drive the assessment down. Whereas we're to the point where it makes no sense, so to speak, from a tax benefit or otherwise.
Well, there'll be some benefit, but it's not going to be what people would expect.
No, but, right.
You know, and what they're doing is discounted cash flow. And just for example, say that year one, the assessment is at 100%. The discounted cash flow is going to take that down. And the one I looked at, 15 years, is going to be about 25% of what it usually started out at. So the impact's going to be there, plus as it depreciates over the years. I don't understand the calculations. I've looked at the calculations, I can do the numbers and understand them, but I don't understand exactly what the whole purpose is. So anyhow.
Thank you. And so all I was going to add to that was basically those 10 years of the pilot or 15, they go by in a hurry.
Yep.
And there's an assessment on the property before they got the pilot, so they're doing both anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, there's a new tax assessment that if you hadn't possibly put the distance there, it's probably a lot more than it would have ever been. So that's number one. Second is we're caught up in the acronym IDA because that's how we were formed. We're somewhat like an EDC, but we have the abilities that only an IDA has.
Mm-hmm. So
working regionally with two counties together, that's pretty important for what we can accomplish. And I know both counties in the past complained about New York not being open for business. And if we weren't doing some of the things we do, our counties wouldn't be open for business. So I think therefore it's pretty important to that. And as for the jobs part, there's so many things now that have gone automated. It's not jobs like you thought they were. You know, a business that used to use 100 people might only employ 30 now. But our numbers are still, we're good, but going forward, some of them, they just aren't gonna create those total number of jobs. And it's maybe a good thing because we don't have that number of workers. Where we do have the advantage north to south is the fact that the northern workforce is a little more motivated to the southern, western counties. Somebody is, and not really do about it. And so we do have some advantages. But as far as debating if someone wants, it's probably not even worthwhile at this point. We just have to make sure we have a metrics that we abide by and do our job and give support to what things will really benefit.
I think also, you know, one of the things that Brian hit on was automation. Automation. One issue with automation, for example, warehouses, if you automate your warehouses, you know, it's not a $20 million building anymore. It's an $80 million building. It's $80 million assessment. So that addition to the tax rolls is a plus for every taxing jurisdiction. And I think people have to think about those things and think about not just the parameter jobs. And don't ever get me wrong, I think jobs are extremely important. And don't get me started on that because I think my base thing is we need to find a way to keep our children here, find jobs for them so they can build, they can grow. And we don't have such an aging population. We hope to get younger, but more economic growth means more support staff, more needed, more sales tax, more other things coming in for businesses. So I think it's important to look at that. But I think we have to take perspective of how business can change over the past 50 years, 60 years. And it's going to change more for a lot of factors. A lot of them is a lot is going to be driven on available workers and how to keep costs down for everyone. So, any other comments, questions? Okay. I wanted to start off and talk about UTEP responses. Going from there, basically in Warren and Washington County, there are 57 taxing jurisdictions, all the way from villages to counties to schools to towns. And some will event some more someday. But on the responses we got, the combined responses we got one response from Washington County. We got, this is just in Washington County, 4 responses from towns. We got 5 responses from schools out of 11, 4 out of 17 towns. In villages, we got no responses. In Warren County, we've got no county response, 0 town responses, 0 village responses, and 3 school responses with the caveat that Glens Falls School responded. However, we don't operate in Glens Falls because it's Glens Falls IDA. The only reason we would get involved in Glens Falls is to support Glens Falls IDA, which we really did. We ran into a problem about 2 years ago when they're rehabbing all these the Hudson, the senior citizen housing in Hudson Falls, the one in Rose, and there's 2 in one in Glens Falls and one in Queensbury. Rehabbing, 2. Yeah. And what ended up happening is normally because they're nonprofits, they would get tax exemption. Well, the state was supposed to execute those and didn't. So they had to come to us. We helped the schools out. We've done some other things for bonds, but that was more because they had bond issues with them before Glens Falls IDA was created. So, so essentially for our purposes, there's 2 schools in Glens Falls in Warren County responded. So out of the total of taxing jurisdictions, about 20% responded. Some with varying things, some with diverse things. I don't want to get lost here today. So the first thing I wanted to do was to go through changes to the UTEP that we made. Some of these were came in as comments. We already made them, so we didn't make the list of the comments. And some were comments based on that weren't really that were more of needing further explanation. The first one was the base pilot. I've already explained what a base pilot is. The base is the existing assessed value for the town, for the property. Deviation or enhance was asked for a definition of that. Shall mean a substantive departure from any one or more requirements or conditions for obtaining financial assistance and or the extent to which financial assistance is available and its amount. For purposes of this policy, offering less financial assistance for a particular project than the maximum amount otherwise available under this policy should not constitute deviation. Let me explain that. Our normal policy is on a standard pilot for manufacturing, for example, is 100% for 10 years, 100% for 5 years, and 50% for the next 5 years. So it is possible we could evaluate something that said they look good after 6 years. So you may modify that so we're not doing the same height level of incentives. We're reducing that. That's better for everyone. So that's that. Enhanced pilots and deviation. Oh, I just explained it. I'm sorry. We are required to notice the taxing jurisdictions involved, all taxing jurisdictions involved in terms of looking at it. So one note, enhanced pilots or deviations required to prove the town in which a project is located, and any comments provided by the town should be considered in the agency review process prior to taking action on the pilot. Now, here's one thing that people misunderstood. What we're talking about is our uniform tax exemption policy. We're asking for comments to come in. There will be two areas where we're at least two areas of contact. I can remember what the new law says. The first is as part of this new change, what we want to do is we want to get the taxing jurisdictions involved earlier. So as soon as we get an application, we're going to invite someone from the municipality, town, school, and county if we'd like to sit in when we interview some of these, in effect, review the application of some of these things. We think it's important, and I always thought it was important that you hear what they got to say. Versus seeing something on paper. There may be things you see or questions that we have to look at. We think it's important we hear that up front. The second one is by mandatory, we're required to send out notifications, which you do, to all taxing jurisdictions involved in that project, village, town, school, county. Unfortunately, I think that some people haven't really looked and understood it. So we're looking for comments to come back. You have comments come back. We want the comments back hopefully 3 days before, so we can incorporate it into the public hearing. But we'll still take comments. We're not asking not to have comments. What we are saying is that before decision-making process, just after the public hearing, we are going to have a vote on it. If you don't make any comments to it, we can't take in consideration. So that's what limitation is. You're always free in our general policy, make any comments on any project you got. But if you want to take it into consideration during our evaluation approval process, if we approve it, we can't take consideration. We can't back up when we're going. So, Craig, I saw a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, on the enhanced policy mediation, it's worth noting there's 7 criteria that are used in judging whether or not to enlist any enhanced policy mediations as part of the process.
Good point. Good point. And a lot of those we are going to when we do an approval process for projects, the things we take into consideration. But I want to make people understand the comments. The comments aren't restricting comments. Comments saying if you want to take into consideration before we approve a project, tell us beforehand. But beforehand is up to and including during the public hearing. This is all on our website if you ever want to read it yourself. You get as confused as I was the first 20 times I read it. Okay, approval of town, some towns we reflected to require town board approval of any real property tax. If before implementation by the town agency, the town will be required to take into consideration needs of the school district and or village. It should say county, it should be county in there. This includes enhanced pilots as well as deviation from UTEP, also see appendix A. Solar wind farm waste. We just put this in there just in case. The application, our position is, and this is in our UTEP, application to be entertained by the IDA only after local municipalities agree in writing. You heard this before. Just kidding. Agree in writing work with the IDA and a pilot to respect variations in local municipality. Each project, the application be needed to be noticed to the local host municipality and the school for their feedback. Recapture benefits policy, this is implied. If a company does not meet their jobs, there are some caveats to that. Jobs requirement they put in place or other, I'll say promises they made. If we take a look at it, we do have a recapture policy. Now, generally, it's evaluated every time it comes up. I mean, if we had looked at one fairly good business that was, we did a pilot on, they closed down for COVID. I'm only trying to say that we have to take in consideration economic time, what's going on there. And there may be reasons because of the economic times why they haven't made the numbers or promises, but we do include parameters for recapture will be included in every pilot agreement as an exhibit. And then this is added, we look at determining project feasibility. Not only do evidence of cost, both capital and operating are reasonable, that a reasonable, well-thought-out business plan exists, that appropriate management and financial accounting capabilities are in place, that there is a market for the proposed service, activity, or products, and that a reasonable marketing plan is in place, that revenue estimates are reasonable in all sources, project funds, including industrial development bond buyers are firmly committed or can reasonably expect to be firmly committed prior to closing. We also evaluate company's financial statement, personal financial statements of partners or owners of 5% and 5% owners of corporations or above, project capital costs, working capital needs, projection of income, operating expenses, cash flow and net profit, business plan, job projections, retained and created, and evidence of equity and other firm financial commitments. So we do take those into consideration. The process we're putting in place is what we talked about is to make sure that once we've done a completed application, we hope to provide it to the school, council, fire, school superintendent, business manager, and assessing where the project is located. So we're covering those bases to get that information out. We need to take consideration the impact on local economy when making a decision. Job, number and type of jobs retained. Even though jobs is important, it shouldn't be only criteria put in place. I mean, if I made a joke that said, well, if we had a chips plant want to come up and look in Queensbury, you know, that's a big change to it, even though there's no space in Queensbury for something like that. It would be important to keep that in mind. Jobs, more importantly, what it's bringing, because you got support businesses. One government comes to one actual circumstance that highlights a lot of what we're talking about. Tax exemption available to and requested by the applicant will be considered by the agency. The cost, total cost of project, a cost benefit analysis. Again, we do a cost benefit analysis on every single project. We've always had to do that. They're reviewed by the ABO. The ABO came in. The huge agency we are, they spent 6 months auditing our budget. You know, so you really get in and they look at it and they do target specific areas. Time to completion, economic benefits. increases in assessed value made by investment of company in relocating the area. Tenant characteristics. I think I said something that was a little misunderstood, but when we look at a project, we look at a project based on this. One of our requirements is that they get the local approvals, whether it be planning board, village approvals, town board approvals, whether it be DEC approvals. We're not qualified to do those. We're not qualified to make those judgments, but they have to get that approval from those agencies before we'll approve the project. So we want to make sure that while we don't evaluate those things, we expect the proper agencies to do their job and report back to us what is needed, what's good, what's bad. Uniqueness, we have to look at it. Uniqueness of project, one of the biggest things is distressed areas, which we have several distressed areas in this area. One being Fort Edward is an Empire Zone. It's a federal opportunity zone. It's classified as a distressed area. That even locates into some parts of areas in Kingsbury, though it's not a big part, but it is there. I go by federal definitions, not my definition. We have areas in Queensbury, small areas. We have areas in northern Warren County. We have other areas in Washington County. So, you know, one of our jobs is to see what we can do to help them out make that transition. If we notice that there are areas like Fort Edward who's lost GEs, who's lost other companies, there was a big hit in the assessed value in those areas. And you know, the more we can bring that in, the more it can help do that. It's there. Existing businesses affected will have an existing business. Sometimes it's good to have two businesses doing the same thing, but sometimes it's bad, so it's an evaluation in terms of that. Material terms, criteria for considering assistance to retail projects. We are not really able to do retail project except for if it's a draw where they can prove a couple things. The first thing is that you may have a unique business that brings business in from all over the country. I talked about we have a boat dealer who over 80% of the business does not come from the regional area. And when I talk about regional area, I mean Warren, Washington, Saratoga, Essex. It comes from outside those areas, so it's a draw into the area. Those are things we look at. So other than that, we really don't pay much attention to retail. We can't. By law, we can't do that. Okay. I've been speaking a lot. Before we move on, more questions?
Well, this brownfield one, where is it?
All the time. It's talking about field of grass is brown or an environmentally distressed area. That's one.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Actually, it might be brown already.
You know, it's surprising how many brownfield properties we have around here.
Especially the small ones, you know, in small hamlets.
Yeah. And the ones that the counties don't want to get in the chain of command for because they have to clean them up with taxpayer expense.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Caimano?
just a thought here while I wilt. Do you think that we get ourselves in trouble? Do you think we're not moving ahead the way we should move ahead because people continually do not understand this? But you did a nice job in a part of this report that you put out. Starting with page 9, for example, 9 and 10, the way that's laid out, makes a kindergartner understand what we're all about. And those pages would follow afterwards, dovetail right with it. I think we need to try to make things easier for people to understand that we're doing nice things for the goddamn community. The other thing is, in respect to that, going back to page 4, on page 4, you have sales and use tax exemption general. That is a long, run-out paragraph that would take an act of Congress to understand if anybody wasn't doing this time after time after time, year after year after year. I think what you, the way you put that 9, 10 and 11 together, that's good. Excuse me, but I still feel that we spend so much time trying to convince the naysayers that we don't have enough time to work with the potential customers. I think Travis Whitehead beats us on the head all the time, and there are any number of ways in this report that he could do so. And we need to straighten that out so that everyone understands what we're doing, not just one time, but every time. That's my speech.
Thank you, Nick. So I want to make a couple examples. You know, people think that someone decides they want to locate in Washington County or Warren County. Doesn't matter which, it's our area. Washington, Warren County, in my belief, and I'm a native here and grew up here, are intertwined. And I think they get more and more intertwined as you get less acreage in Warren County to build housing developments, to build factories and or economic things. Is that people don't realize Warren County or Washington County is not just competing for locations in Warren, Washington County. We have competition in Saratoga County. We have competition in Essex County. We have competition from every single state coming in here. Like the company I talked about, who's really considering pulling up their strings and moving most of their operation and building their additional operation in South Carolina. We know it's not the biggest one in this area. It is true. They consider it. We had a company gotta be careful what I say, is that we had a company in Essex County that wanted to come to Warren County, moved down here because of population, because it's near to everything else. And they ran into roadblocks. They took most of that company to South Carolina. We lost a new and expanding businesses bringing different product lines. What WL Plastics? WL Plastics is a real life consideration. They had 7 other locations they were looking at. Ohio, Pennsylvania, Connecticut. There was another one in New York. I think there's a couple in Pennsylvania. I don't remember them all. They chose this area. They chose this area for very specific reasons, but I was very close with the project manager. And had we not been able to give them some incentives, they would have gone someplace else. And I will tell you, the incentives that not only other places in your state are offering, and incentives in the other states are offering, they're far greater than we are. It's tough enough to get people to go and expand in New York State. It's tougher when we're up in upstate New York. And I think that we really need to look at the long-term goal is not today. The long-term goal is the future of our 2 counties and the growth and population. And, you know, we have people looking at the schools, where the schools will be. You know, there's a couple school districts I know that are very well off, who don't have some of these issues. There's others that are really concerned about where they're going to be in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So I'll get off for a second. So it's real. You know, we've had companies not come here. We've had companies leave here for Saratoga or Albany County. We miss those companies. We miss those jobs. I'll get off my high horse.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I comment, Mr. Clamos, feedback to us for a moment? I just want to point out that after we're done with the UTEP and policy updates, we were gonna be updating our messaging, including the messaging on our website. And so Nick, I wanted to point it out to you, as far as the public facing information, we are striving to make sure people understand what we do and how we do it. This is a dense document, it's hard to do it here, but after we approve, the UTEP, you'll see some changes in our messaging. Does that make sense? Nick?
Makes sense.
You can't hear me nodding my head.
Okay.
I can't even see it now, your head right in front of me.
There's
Okay.
nothing in it. That's why you can't hear it.
So I wanted to go down through, list of comments. As I said, we got a list of comments in there. I think I've covered no limits on comment. We've already mentioned that. There was a very specific purpose in our UTEP for those comments. So we've answered that comment. The other thing was Civic Development Corporation contains same terminology. CDC is only just for one purpose. The Civic Development Corporation only exists to do bonds and help finance for nonprofits. They don't have any tax liabilities, so that's the only reason for the CDC. It used to be years ago, I don't remember how many years ago, probably 10, 12, that the IDA did both. Then all of a sudden the CDC, then all of a sudden they made a determination the IDAs couldn't do nonprofits in terms of that. So we had to split it off. We've done such projects. We talked about the projects with the housing authorities, SUNY ACC, their housing, the other financing way back when we did bonds through Rensselaer Hospital, many different things. We've done benefits, Silver Bay. Those would all fit under the CDC. It would not fit under the IDA. Cost
Just
benefit
to note
now.
on the CDC though, any bond issuance needs to be approved by both counties before we can do that.
Microphone.
Please.
Cost benefit analysis, we've already talked about that. That's been a requirement all the way along. It quickly shows what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. The other one we also looked at was that we've already passed a resolution on this, is that retain approval is required by towns list and schools to give it a chance. So retain approvals by towns list and required, and towns required to take schools and villages. We already passed a resolution about 6 weeks ago on that, so that's already in there. No limits on comments. Reestablish solar policies. We're not, as I said, in our solar policy, we're not going to be involved in solar policies unless people do. So I want to have a discussion why that may be a good idea sometime. I'd be glad to have that conversation. Not trying to do it, but there are some very specific reasons why some of that may be good for people. I'm not saying I want to do it, but I'm just saying that if you want to have a conversation, I'd be glad to have a conversation. Deviations requiring approval of taxing jurisdiction, that's already in there. So I'm not going to go there. So I want to go down to, there are 3 other comments we had that I think that the board has to listen to and vote on in terms of that, because we have some concerns about that. So Washington County passed a resolution that essentially directing and instructing Washington County appointed members of the county's Board of Washington Industrial Development Agency regarding procedures for tax exemptions granted by the agency resolve. Directs and instructions appointed members to the counties of Warren and Washington Industrial Agency to ensure that any IDA, ETF, or other policy that provides any tax abatement or exemption required the affirmative consent of any taxing entity whose revenues or operations will be affected by that tax statement. So that was Washington County. That was their comment. Does everyone here understand that? I think it's divided. Yes.
Permission needs to be granted. Or you're directed to informed before action.
No, I didn't.
So Washington County passed a resolution requesting all notification. That
No, it's not notification, it's that we require the approval of every taxing jurisdiction.
affected.
Yes.
All 57,
Pardon?
all 57.
No, it's all 57, it's all, everyone that's in the taxing jurisdiction. I struggled with this one because the wording was really improper. So I would ask for any discussion on this. If not, I'll go ahead.
So timeline, we always work on the timeline, application comes in and starts the process. So where does it fit in out of the process? And how does it work with our existing timeline?
It will delay the project.
A month or two?
Could be. I mean, what happens if a board doesn't meet for 2 or 3 months? We know the towns meet regularly, but I'm not saying it happens, but what happens if they don't get to it? You know, the pace of business today is very quick. You know, I think that our operation, that what I was trying to do was, what we were trying to do, not me, the board was trying to do is speed up the process. Because the series of sequences that has to happen, is look at it. I wanted to bring out a conversation up front, so we got the input. And have people in all municipalities come and talk, or at least if they wanted to talk, and read the information and hear what the company said. I think that makes a big difference. Versus having a piece of paper in front of you and say, oh, yes, no, maybe. You know, there's reasons why we do things, and maybe questions you have or people have that have that. So basically what they're directing the Washington County members to do is to vote for this. Or they threaten to throw us out the board. Honestly, they did.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can add another way of looking at this, for an application, there's one board that approves it. If we follow this language, it would be 4 boards at least. County board, a town board, and a school board, and then us. And some of our applications are not just one town, sometimes or one school district, so it will just have multiple boards and call them.
We're not trying to lack information, because information is out there. We're always willing to talk, but, you know, we need to make sure that we respect businesses who are trying to make investments in the local community. The issue today is not if people have the ability to make the investment. We have a situation where people need to be incentivized to make that investment because they're taking bigger risks than they ever did before. Yes.
Are there any other IDAs that have similar restrictions upon their abilities to move forward with credit?
Not as complex as this.
So this would be a precedent-setting action.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know it's precedent setting. I don't know all of the IDAs, so I can't speak for all the IDAs. I do know some are in the same situation that some towns have requested to have approving authority before it goes forward, and if they look at it and they're supposed to be taking consideration the schools, towns, counties, and villages in their decision-making process. So, I mean, there are other IDAs that do that, and some that don't require any approvals from anyone in terms of doing it. I'm not trying to be casual, but, you know, there are IDAs out there that don't require any approval, except for their own board. But I think the information, getting the information out is very important. Right?
Yeah, so I think the whole idea when we started looking at these examples to speed things up and move things quicker and get to actual town where things were going and have a discussion before we made a decision, find out if it was what that municipality or school district, whatever they wanted there. If they don't want it there, it gives us 2 options. Find another area that does want it, or just flatly say no, so they can move on. So that speeds up everybody's process. So I think where we were trying to go originally is still in play. We're just gonna notify them as quick as possible, bring them in and find out where they're at. This situation here where they want us to vote for that, and we can vote for that in Washington County, because we're an even number board. 5 and 5 doesn't change anything anyway. But it's a case where I understand the towns don't want to be railroaded, the schools don't want to be railroaded. And we had good discussions about our sales tax, mortgage tax and things like that, like they were just in solar arrays and stuff that didn't make any sense. We were just giving away taxpayer dollars for something that's coming anyway. I think that's kind of where we ended up. And I think we all believe that now after seeing the different things that happened, and some of them even backed away from coming to us. Because they realized they're getting a better deal if they don't do any of it. It's just no written, the state takes care of it. Well, so I think where that's at, I mean, we gotta vote this up or down.
We're trying,
But it's, the good news is we're going to, we're still keeping in place the same towns that were concerned about this back in the 1990s or whatever year it was, are still all in play, and that won't change. So that should suffice for what we're trying to accomplish.
I would say that we spent some money hiring a consultant to take a look at the financial aspects of solar. I mean, I was flabbergasted when I saw the results. And these are people that have worked with the state to do some of the stuff, and you know, I will tell you that I don't believe that any solar project needs anything. That's a complete change from where I was a while back. And I would just, they gave us 8 scenarios. And not only is the governor trying to, I shouldn't say the governor, the budget process, trying to put the depreciated cash flow, decreasing cash flow, what do they call it, in place. They give it more incentives in the budget to solar. So I don't know if it's going to impact. Maybe some of the schools know better than I do because I don't follow it every day, but the budget process is still going on. And so that's where we're at. So yes.
Can I also just mention, Mr. Campbell's point that what the taxing jurisdictions will get, they'll get notice of an application, they'll get the application, they'll get the finding statement, and then an opportunity to comment. But I just want to make sure it's very clear that these taxing jurisdictions will have several opportunities to be very involved.
Will they be brought in before that application even at the initial stage or no?
We as a board will choose whether or not to accept an application. And then if we do, we will notice the jurisdictions. And then we'll spend time researching the application, doing the finding statement, and then provide that finding statement at the time of public notice. Now we need the opportunity for that to be reviewed and then commented in the public hearing.
Well, it would be my hopes that even if that's the way it's written, that we would reach out to something in Chester that, maybe I'm being bored, you already know that something's coming. But if it was in one of his neighboring towns, that we'd reach out and say, hey, this might be coming from your town. That's how you get ahead of it. They go and find out. I think that's where we really want to go. I don't know that that's going to be written into it or should be written.
So I agree with you, Brian, but sometimes we don't have all the information to receive an application. So to say XYZ's company's coming, we haven't even been able to do our analysis of whether it fits or not fits. And we may say, oh.
But if you know the situation that one town is totally opposed to something that might be going there, you might want to have that conversation first and say, hey, somebody's looking here. Are you interested or flat no? Because no point in wasting everybody's time in those situations.
Notice with most applicants that they're already talking with elected officials.
Which is a good thing.
Most right. So in most cases, there's already discussions going on. And a lot of times the elected official like for us to get involved because we can further facilitate the investment opportunity.
Mr. Chairman, is there a reason for us to have to vote on this accepting this resolution from Washington County today? So what's in front of us?
That's what's in front of us today.
Is there any way, and I'm thinking about the consequences, right? If Washington County decides to remove all their members, it would create a little bit of disarray for this board. I think.
We're not gonna do
that. That's important. But it would cause us some difficulty. Can you go back to the Washington County Board and find some way to maybe resolve their concerns as well as ours and move this forward? Instead of getting to the point where we have to, yes or no right now.
Correcting the UTEP and what we've actually gone through is going to suffice for that, I do believe. But they will just want an up or down vote that knows that we supported their wishes. And because right now they're actually holding up Marcia Sully funds for the bridge until the UTEP is finished, so it has to be finished. And this is the only way to get it finished is to vote up here tonight.
So,
Yeah,
Okay.
Well, on this resolution, I'm going to
Can't hear you, Mr. Chairman.
on this resolution, then finally use that. Yeah. So having said that,
So we might say no to the Washington County resolution, that we're not accepting it, but we'll approve the UTAP and cross our fingers. Is that what you say?
yeah, we have to do our 50 years, we understand. We're most friends.
Okay.
Well-
Sorry, more kind
I think that if
the
we
whole system would be changed. We wouldn't have any more public hearings. We got to put on several different people on the IDA. We'll be about 40 or 50 people and we'll get it done, but we won't have all the rest of the bullshit. This is nonsense, complete nonsense.
So I will entertain a motion to make this an amendment to the UTEP.
I'll add it, so we can vote on it.
We have a second? Mike Wild?
Do we have that written in our packet?
Yes, you had it.
There's my packet. Yeah.
I'll second also.
It is.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I could
ma'am.
ask just to be clear, what is the specific amendment that we're referring to?
Just remember, there's the first comment titled directing and instructing Washington County Board of Members. And the amendment would be to require all taxing jurisdictions to approve a project before it goes forward. That's
So that amendment is being added to the proposed UTEP, and that's what's on the table right now.
we're putting on the table whether or not we want to add that to it. So we have a motion and a second. I'll ask for discussion.
I'm confused. So we're putting the Washington County resolution as part of our UTAP. But we're changing our UTAP. What are we doing now?
I think that's complete. I think they're asking that this language be incorporated into the UTEP, that any project would have to go to the taxing jurisdictions for approval before the project could proceed. Right now, it's the way the draft is presented. There's language that requires the approval in the case of a deviation. And there's approval of the towns, I'm sorry, there's approval of the towns in case of a deviation. And then there's approval based on the list of taxing jurisdictions that have been asked to be placed on that list for additional approval. This resolution, it's my understanding, is asking for all taxing jurisdictions to approve. So, for instance, if there was a project in Lake George, we go down the list and we'd ask all those taxing jurisdictions for the approval prior to the project moving forward to the end.
So this would affect projects in Warren County as well.
Yes,
And this could be delaying project,
Yeah.
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know
What'd you say, Mike?
It's gonna delay the projects, Nick. It's gonna delay projects in Warren County also,
Yeah,
which precludes us
Forever.
possibly providing benefits to an organization that could create great benefits to our communities. Because we have to wait months and
Years.
it doesn't work that way. Well, I'm a no.
More roadblocks you put in front
Let's
of
call the question.
you, go someplace else.
well, we expect more.
One board call it.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more clarification I'd like to bring up before we vote, and that is, correct me if I'm wrong, the municipalities still retain the ability to be added to a
Yeah.
list
Correct,
that would require their approval.
correct.
Of course.
How's that?
Roll call.
Craig Leggett,
So for clarification, it's this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Result on this chart, which is on, I do have that in.
Okay.
I didn't have. We're gonna do it sideways.
We're gonna send you to the third school. Start with somebody else.
Mayor, no?
okay, Tim Robinson,
No.
Mike Wild,
No.
Dan Bruno,
No.
Nick Carmano,
No.
Mary King,
Your microphone, Mayor.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
I'm thinking. I can down.
yes. Brian Campbell,
Yes.
Juan Gonzalez, Ginny Sullivan,
No.
Craig Leggett,
No.
Mary,
No.
Dave O'Brien.
Yes.
Okay, it does not pass.
The second one was no tax abatements to residential apartments unless requested by taxing jurisdiction. Funny, I just read an article this morning talking about the need to find, it was actually the comment by everyone who's talked about the need to find ways to lower the cost of housing for people, make it more affordable. And we have a different span of commercial housing. Commercial housing is all commercial. Excuse me, residential apartments is all commercial. You're paying for a service in a sense. So we need to find a way, especially in this area, to find a way. Had to talk with the schools. I think some of the other schools have the same thing. Our teachers can't afford to live in Warren County. They can't find housing. They can't buy housing. They're living in South Bend Falls. They're living far away. They have to travel. Lake George welcomed the project for workforce development because it brought affordable housing for their teachers to the school, the schoolyard. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that have taken place, but that was the second thing comment came up that I thought we didn't cover anyplace else, and we should bring that to a vote.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just remind the board that we have 3 active projects in the residential area, all the 3 needed. And if we were to no longer be able to be involved in residential, I think it would have a negative impact on our community.
Right?
I think this is a case where you can't have a plan. It's gotta be situational, just like everything else that comes out of the site. I think this one you can't. This is a whole different ball, what we live today than we were 20 years ago. And, we have to look at these by merit on what they actually see it case by case. I don't think just to be a blanket.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I agree. There's a huge issue with workforce housing in Warren County. And workforce housing doesn't necessarily need to be apartments.
Right.
And maybe we need to change the definition of workforce housing, right? Because there's young families that can't find places to live. And what's happened since the pandemic is that housing prices have increased. I'm shocked at how much they've gone up in Warren County, Queensborough specifically.
Well, your short-term rentals have also done a job. Those are family houses.
It's also been an impact, but it's a desirable place to live. And we've got to deal with that, but we also need to make sure that we have the working stock, so to speak, to be able to support us moving forward in the future. It's a major issue on all the industrial agencies around here understand that and understand the need. So again, I'm looking for either some kind of modification of our voting.
Why don't we move it? We can vote now.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Second by Mike. Further discussion?
I'd like to know what specifically we're referring to. Can you read it, please?
What we're referring to is that any deviation, excuse me, I'm reading the wrong thing. No tax abatements to residential apartments unless requested by taxing jurisdiction. Sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. So I gotta get a little fuzzy today.
Sure. So that's in the policy.
No.
No, this is one of the comments that wasn't in the policy that was requested by 1, 2, 3 comments I received back. 3 out of 20 comments I received back.
And can you name the three?
It was School Whitehall, School Hudson Falls, and Kingsbury, who was on the opt-out list.
So this means that if we were past that, we would no longer do any investment incentive projects.
Without
Residential projects.
without approval of the town. I know that there are some communities that are in good shape or are trying to restrict their housing because they have limits on sewer and water. And other things, but there's a lot of others who really need housing and need affordable housing.
And this is just basically taking away the blanket, there, you would still be under the same rules that we've been in right along.
Right, and Mr. Chairman, point out earlier, there's still the planning board, the zoning board, the DEC. So,
No discussion, you got a motion in a second?
No. The whole new tax policy is we have modified it, engages, and puts out notice, so that's the commission already, so that they do have the opportunity to comment early on, one way or another. That's correct.
that's correct. And matter of fact, the most recent residential, we got a very negotiation from the mayor of the village. So that's a notification and typically
Unsolicited.
unsolicited letter.
So. Does show some people do read what they send us. I think the really important is communication. I mean, a lot of the comments I've got from people were because they really didn't understand the complexity of what we do. You know, I have a problem because I don't think of these things as tax breaks. I think of phasing in taxes, which is because there is no reduction of taxes. It's more of a phasing in over a period of time to allow companies to get their feet on the ground and grow. And hopefully, by giving incentives, we can help lower the rental price for some of these things. And that's one thing that I've talked to Chuck, and I've got some other ideas that we're gonna put into that you're gonna maintain this, or, you know, we're gonna go recapture.
Yeah, and that's an important point. I want to just make that when we look at each application, we will make sure there's language in the resolution, make sure that housing is built and operated as intended.
As what?
As intended.
As intended.
So when someone comes to us and says, I have a workforce housing project, we'll make sure to bake it into the resolution. Make sure they are doing what they said they would do.
We're gonna have to annual reporting. Actually, the calculation for housing is pretty straightforward. So. Okay, motion second, roll call please.
Craig Leggett,
No.
Tim Robinson,
No.
Mike Wild,
No.
Dan Bruno,
No.
Nick Caimano,
No.
Mary King, Brian Campbell, Juan Gonzalez,
No.
Ginny Sullivan, Dave O'Brien.
No. Okay, last item. I hope I'm not boring everyone. What's it called? Last
Oh,
item.
starving us, but not boring us.
Well, I'm starved too, you know? Future UTEP changes required to be approved by all taxing jurisdictions. I thought about this for a while, I said, sort of makes sense. But I thought about 57 organizations would have to approve. One person, one agency could simply not put it in their plate, it fails automatically. And then I thought about what would happen. They're Utah. If, for a chance, Hampton wanted to apply to be on on the required approval by the town? It would never happen. Because you never get 57 taxi jurisdictions to do it. So I went through this, thought about that, and that's another one of the traps put in place based on the same three organizations. This came from the same three organizations. So I think that, while there's plenty of controls in place, our books are open, anyone can ask us any questions. We're there.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, some of us do represent that have those taxing jurisdictions for elected representatives of the people as well. Hopefully we bring common sense to this board and look out for our taxing jurisdictions as well. So that there would be almost redundant to have to go through all of them. All 57 to Utah. There's going to be a little bit of trust on the competency of the IDA board and also sometimes question. We should be able to make sound decisions.
So we need a little misfire shoulder, we corrected that and move forward. Okay, you want to vote on that? No.
Amber alert here. Sorry.
We know where you are,
They were looking for Campbell.
Okay, next step.
Mr. Chairman, just ask one question on that topic. Is it required that counties approve these?
No,
The legal requirement is that if you're doing, overall, if you're doing an overhaul, like that, with substantial changes, then you're required to, send a copy to the taxing jurisdictions and receive input. To the extent that the input is provided, but there's no, in general municipal law, doesn't have an approval requirement. And there's nothing in the existing policy that had an approval requirement.
so we've been going on this, we've had 60 days to comment, we extended it by 30 days to get more comments. We had some really good comments that we didn't think of. I mean, I talked about reading this, I probably read this 100 times. And probably skipped over the same thing, how you read the book at the same time and over and keep on missing things. There's a lot of good comments that came back that were very positive and productive that improved what we did. So we did listen to the input. We did incorporate a lot of this in there. We did listen to people. And, when it came down to 3 items, it was pretty damn good.
Moving forward, I mean, if we had other great comments, years on road, we can still change this, modify it again, if need be.
Yeah, it's over the document.
Yeah.
The problem is we waited 40 years before, 40 years, 30 years before we looked at it again. We didn't remember any changes. We didn't keep up with the times.
Wait till they tell me.
Mr. Chairman, did we vote on that last?
I guess no one make motion, didn't think of.
We never run to the floor.
Did we bring it to the floor? No. Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if we can do some kind of proclamation or something like that, but why don't we just send a letter to the 7 varieties of taxing districts to say that we're open to discuss changes to our policy. We still want to make decisions moving forward with regards to incentives for businesses and jobs here. But it's not in our best interest to have, all of Washington County have settlers, or maybe all of Warren County have settlers.
Well, you turn to the county budget, it has to be unanimous every time. How would you ever get there?
True.
Yeah.
That's true. Would never happen.
So that brings us to the UTEP itself. We completed the UTEP. It's been out to you for a couple times, probably about 400 different, a lot of different revisions. We've been working on this for 2 years, finally got to a point. I would entertain a motion to adopt the UTEP. Motion by Dan Bruno, do I have a second? Brian Campbell. Any further discussion?
Thank you for all your effort on it.
No. been a long time coming, but it's a lot better. So I'll ask for a roll call on that also.
And there will be an opportunity to correct any.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Craig Leggett.
Yeah.
Tim Robinson,
Yes.
Mike Wild,
Yes.
Dan Bruno,
Yes.
Nick Caimano,
Yes,
Harry King,
Yes.
Brian Campbell,
Yes.
Juan Gonzalez,
Yes.
Jeannie Sullivan,
Yes.
Steve O'Brien.
Yes. Okay, last order of business is that what started this was our policy had an entire UTEP in it. It was the wrong place for it. Because even the members who don't know how many times I read this one, but it was just spread out over, all the pieces are spread out through the whole document. And even I got comments from people who said, well, that isn't UTEP. Yes, it is. It's part of UTEP. So we pulled that out of our policy and procedures manual. And we're looking to move forward with this. You've all seen it. It's all been out there. I would ask for a motion to adopt the new policy manual. Motion by Dan Bruno, do I have a second? Second by Brian. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. I don't think I had any, oh, I do have something else.
quickly.
In the nick of time.
Okay, Rose UTEP, we have one thing that came up is that you're approached by PHE. They would like to release an additional 6 acres at the same terms that we had before. This came up about 2 months ago, and then all of a sudden it just came up yesterday, or not yesterday. I don't know, it was last week.
They brought the issue up. They said they were not interested in the property. And now they just come back this week and ask for reconsideration.
So this
This
is on top of
is
what
lay down site.
right, but this is on top of what they were already doing.
Correct. Correct. So the area that they originally said they would not be renting, but the large building and that area in front of the large building. They continue to say they're not interested in the large building, but they would like to use the outside area. It's roughly 5 or 6 acres, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, 5 or 6 acres. I'm going to ask them to carve out so we can have a direct line because I had a request from a company and I can't disclose that at this point to rent a building. I haven't had direct conversations, just sort of in between. And they would like to ship out of there. So to store in the big building and then ship out of there. So that's, I'll have more information. I've not talked directly to the company, so therefore I don't want to say anything until I
So
do.
you have to make sure it's feasible for both to happen. So,
Right.
and so the lease payment would go up because there's more involved.
More acreage, luggage.
Right.
Everything.
You want to make sure it wasn't for the same price. That's
Equal terms, right?
Equal terms, yeah.
okay.
So,
Second.
Moved by Craig, second by Brian. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Do you have a question first?
I was just making sure that there was no restrictions upon us with a large building that happened. So we have to go through that effort, so we did.
yeah, just explain around the large building, there's still adequate space for a tenant to store and maneuver. The area that Kiewit is interested in is a good,
Closer to the rail.
yeah, so you know where the concrete walls are, it's within those. And as you know, the beginning of that wall is far from the large building, so there's plenty of space for it.
Dave, do you roll call?
You can make it that way.
Or I would rather do it than find out we did it wrong.
Okay.
Okay, Craig Leggett,
Yes.
Tim Robinson,
Yes.
Mike Wild,
Yes.
Dan Bruno,
Yes.
Nick Caimano,
Yes,
Mary King,
Yes.
Brian Campbell,
Yes.
Juan Gonzalez,
Yeah.
Jeannie Sullivan,
Yes.
Dave O'Brien.
Yes. Any other business come before? Public comment, public left. I guess we're adjourned. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.